Well, to say there's been a little bit of confusion over what's happening with our bank holidays, public holidays, especially, of course, we've got one coming up for the TT as such. And then we hear from the Chief Minister almost as an aside in the press conference that it's not happening. And then, well, a lot more happened and we've got other items coming up. So I've got a person who's going to take the blame for this. I think your name, Mr. Cannan, is in the frame for this confusion, and I'm being polite on this one. First of all, what's happening, why did it happen, and what's going to happen?
Well, thank you very much, Paul. And first of all, I must apologise because there has been clearly a significant communication breakdown around this whole matter. That's caused a furore on social media, possibly some upset, and clearly I must take responsibility for that and offer my sincere apologies. What is happening and what is planned to happen is that the senior race day bank holiday is planned at the moment to push that forward to Friday the 28th of August so that we have a 4-day bank holiday. And the reasoning behind that is a lot to do with the current situation on the ground, but primarily because we have 3,500 people at the moment on social security welfare benefits, the MIRA system, job seekers allowance. Those 3,500 people 6 weeks ago were leading their lives and earning money and looking after their families. They now face an uncertain future for many of them. We have hundreds of businesses yet who are unable to open, a lot of those businesses in the leisure and hospitality industries. And we believe that actually the best chance that we have of having both a successful bank holiday weekend from a social perspective, but also from an economic perspective, is to push that bank holiday now to Friday, the 28th of August, to allow a longer extended celebration that might, circumstances prevailing, just might give some of our businesses who are facing the most uncertain of futures some kind of lift going forward. And that has been primarily the thinking and the reasoning as to why we are planning to move the bank holiday from the Friday in June to Friday the 28th of August.
Right, well, I asked the question at the press conference. I mean, obviously, this all depends, doesn't it, on where we are on this curve. I mean, obviously, it's very flat at the minute. At what level will it necessarily be revoked again if we've got a lot of positive cases?
Well, I cannot answer that question, Paul. There are a lot of risks. What it would appear to be at the moment is that come the June bank holiday, there will still be a number of restrictions in place. There are likely to be restrictions around gatherings. There is a lot of clarity still to be sought as to when certain businesses are going to get going. And under the phasing and under the medium-term strategy, the hospitality and leisure industry are going to be one of the last to open up. And it looks highly unlikely that they will be in any shape to benefit from the June bank holiday. And as I said, there would be significant benefit if things are looking good on the ground for those businesses to benefit potentially from a 4-day extended period, which we could also use to pay tribute and give recognition to the community properly. And given that it was a 4-day weekend, that means those key workers who would potentially miss out because they would be working would also have the opportunity to, I hope, join the community in whatever recognition that we choose to put together and deliver. And there's clearly still some consultation to undertake around that, but that would be the plan.
And this is the whole thing. Consultation is what the government usually does so much of. I mean, this cancellation pretty well without any warning to anybody else. And then now this sort of running around trying to find another date. It does kind of have that feeling that this is all just a policy on the hoof almost.
Well, it was always going to be the case, Paul. It has not been handled very well. There has been a significant communication breakdown around this. I apologise significantly for that. We still had to firm up the date. That date has now been firmed up as the planned date. We still have some consultation to do, but we will make a clear announcement on this early next week.
So what other things have you got to sort out, or can't you go into detail? I mean, why can't you just say this will be the date, we're going with it?
Well, we will make that announcement properly next week. We are planning the 28th of August, Friday the 28th of August, and as I said, very early next week we will make that formal announcement as the planned replacement date for Friday the 12th of June.
What does it cost the actual economy of the Isle of Man to have a bank holiday? You must have the rough idea where it goes, because you've got to pay out people who have to take a day off, but others have to work and get double time, and so on. Any idea what it costs the Manx economy?
Well, it's always debatable as to the actual cost. But these circumstances are significantly different to any circumstances that we had before. What I can tell you is that on the 12th of June there will be, as it stands at the moment, hundreds of businesses who will either only just be getting back on their feet or will be facing a hugely uncertain future. There will also likely to be still thousands of people impacted by the lack of productivity and the lack of business operation that has gone on. There has been a huge, significant and serious cost to all this. And what we want to do is to give ourselves every opportunity to be as productive as possible going forward, and there would be significant benefits to doing a 4-day weekend for our business people and individuals who are employed in these industries to regain some, I admit only small, but just give them some succor, some assurance that there is going to be a future for them. And I think everybody has to recognise that, whilst there are a lot of people under a lot of stress and strain, key workers, there's a lot of people still employed and working incredibly hard. We also have on the other side of the coin thousands who need every opportunity, and we need to try and give and take every opportunity that we have. And it seemed to the councillor ministers, to the Treasury, to myself, that there was an opportunity to provide some succour and some lifeblood to certain sectors of our economy.
And finally on this, because I know in a sense some people will be watching this going, this is totally blown out of all proportion, but were you surprised about how many people were going on to this petition almost to get things put back?
Look, it was, Paul, I have to accept responsibility for the communication. It's hardly surprising if we hadn't communicated the fact that there would be a replacement or an additional date being planned and being provided. So first of all, no, I'm not, and I apologise for that.
Okay, but let's move on then. How are we doing otherwise? I mean, while I've got you on, I mean, you're on the sharp end of these figures. How is Isle of Man PLC looking at the moment?
Well, I've already explained that we expect to expend up to £100 million in the months, and we're coming to the end of the end of May will be effectively the 3-month point, because we started supporting salaries in March, so we will have done March, April and May for thousands of businesses. We still have to extend that. We have the MIRA scheme operating. That is going to cost us something in the region of up to an expected £7 million. We have the business support scheme. So it is costing at the moment millions and millions of pounds, and we obviously have a lot of deferred payments coming through. As we get people back to work, our vision and sight as to the extent of the damage has yet to be seen. But you also have to recognise, Paul, that there are a number of signals coming through, of course, that the UK, our nearest neighbour, is entering serious recession period. You see documents that actually talk about depression. You see documents that talk about recovery possibly in the 12-month period after, in 2021, 2022. What I can say is that, we have to be cognizant and recognise the fact that there could still be serious impacts across the community in a number of areas. We have to up our productivity, and we have to be working as smartly and as astutely we can. I realise people need time off, but we also have to recognise there are thousands of people whose jobs and livelihoods are at stake, and that we should be looking to try and find every avenue to give people some hope and some succour for the future. And part of the planning process is to deliver an economic plan. We are working on that at the moment, and backing that up, there will have to be a fiscal plan as well that makes sense and ties in with our overall strategic purpose on this.
Okay, but I mean, there's no easy way I can say this without it sounding crass to some people who've been affected. And of course, every death is regrettable. But clearly, our numbers here are very, very low. I mean, there's 1,000 deaths per year. There's so many per week, and there's about 3 or 4 a day on average. You must be looking at this and seeing how the economy could potentially tank. And our death rate is incredibly low. And as I say, it's very sad that anyone dies. But you must be going, surely it's time to get people back to work. We've flattened the curve. It's almost non-existent, except for maybe the odd spike that's happened from the nursing home.
Yeah, and deeply regret all the associated deaths and the care home deaths as well. Paul, very, very sad situation that we have there. But we have moved the overall objective from preservation of life to protection of life. I think Council of Ministers, Treasury, Health even recognise that protecting life also extends to ensuring that we are not only protecting health but also protecting our economy and protecting our social infrastructure as well. And that's why, having controlled the virus to the level that we have had so far, that we've got the ability within the NHS now to cope with any increases, that we should be now moving to get people back to work. And I'm pleased that we're doing that on a phased basis. Clearly, like everybody else, there's an element of frustration and questioning as to whether we're going quickly enough. But to a large extent, we still have to be incredibly careful when we're talking about people's health and the potential, not just for them to get the virus, but for them to spread the virus into an environment that it could have devastating effects. So, yes, I do want to see people back at work. I do want to see the economy moving, but we have to take a very balanced approach to that. Protection of life at the forefront, maintaining our critical infrastructure.
I mean, we've had the construction sector back at work now for 2 weeks, and that was very important to see if there's any spikes or anything that's going on. And I know that data you have been looking at, no doubt, very carefully. And we seem to be okay. I keep my fingers crossed like everybody else. Does that not give it a good sign that we can get more people back into their buildings, into their offices, or onto wherever else they do, as long as there's this sort of responsibility that's taken into account and we're all adult about it?
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that it is important that as a government we have to be trusting of individuals to make the right decisions. There has to be self-responsibility and there has to be self-discipline in this. And I know that a lot of businesses are taking this incredibly seriously, have put in place a lot of the guidance that's been provided to them to enhance the safety of their staff, and a lot of planning is going on. As I said, we are starting to phase this back in. Every couple of weeks we are reviewing it formally from a position you can have confidence, given that the construction industry has been back now just over 2 weeks. That so far so good in terms of the numbers of cases that are being reported. And slowly but surely we can gather confidence that we're doing things in the right way and that people's safety is being looked after appropriately. And clearly, if we get an outbreak, then we need to move to contain that and suppress that as quickly as possible.
And are you united? I'm sure you're going to say you are, but surely there's a difference of opinion in Coleman. I mean, you must be fighting the side of getting people back to work, and I should imagine others are being more cautious.
I think, Paul, Council of Ministers abides by collective responsibility. We're absolutely united in terms of the way that the approach to this has been taken. We're absolutely united that we are undertaking this with the right objectives, with the right priorities in mind. Always behind the scenes there is debate. People have different views, but we're united as a council. I believe we're united behind the strategy document that we've got, and we also accept that is a working document, and that as the position shifts and changes and we start to understand this disease more, understand the implications, what's working, what's not working, we can try and move forward at a slightly faster pace if that's feasible. And clearly, as we see other countries bring forward initiatives, we can also look at those as well and consider whether actually they are the type of initiatives that are worth adopting.
Because it has been interesting looking at New Zealand, and I read an article that they are been so successful of eliminating it so far. Again, keeping it low, like the Isle of Man is now doing. But the other side of that is that they could be locked down and cut off from the rest of the world for much longer because they haven't had that herding going on, the process of having people going through and coming out the other side. We could be in that situation if we're not careful, if we keep the borders shut too long.
I think there's still a lot of unknowns about this disease, Paul. I think the science around it is still developing. We are just focused on protecting life at the moment and doing so in such a way that we recognise clearly protecting life is not just about an individual's health, but broader society impacts on the economy and social impacts as well. We are committed to and focused on what's happening on the Isle of Man. There are a lot of big issues around what's going to happen to borders in the future. How's that going to work from the sort of global economic perspective? Indeed, how we would manage that from an Isle of Man perspective if and when, for example, universities opened up or global business did open up and we still felt that the transmission levels were still significant in the UK. But we are having to manage this on almost a month-by-month basis. We've set out a plan in a strategy document, as I said. That is a working document, and we will adjust that as and when we feel it appropriate to do so. But the important thing is, at the moment, we have very low transmission, which is great news. We have good facilities in the hospital to deal with any outbreaks that may occur, and we are starting slowly but surely to get our economy moving again.
Okay, final then. Crystal ball time. When do you think that'll be?
I think it was slowly but surely we are getting things back to normal. And as I said, the whole purpose is we started this conversation. We think that actually one of the things that we could do to help those hundreds of businesses at the moment and thousands of people facing an uncertain future is potentially give them a lift as a community over a long bank holiday weekend that incorporates a Friday and a Monday, and for various social reasons as well. That would prove to be, I think, the right way to start to recognise hopefully our key workers. But of course there are variables, accept there's risks in everything, but we've got to stick together on this. We've got to keep going, keep believing that we're going to get out of this, and we've got to take our opportunities as and when they arise.